Queensland this weekend has its May Day long weekend. Yes, it's Labor Day on Monday. And it just made me stop and think, Labor actually tries to ignore all the big issues. They really just want us to talk about everything else other than what they are and what they actually stand for. And so Queenslanders are getting a long weekend, a day off on Monday. And of course, Monday will be a celebration day for the true believers. They'll be celebrating on a day that's shared only, though, by socialist and communist countries around the world. Russia, China, North Korea, they'll all have their May Day events. And here in Brisbane, they'll get together, they'll be singing their socialist hymns like Die Internationale, and they'll call each other comrade. And they'll talk about workers' rights and fantasise about the shearers' strike of the 1800s. And of course, they'll gloss over the fact that the Tree of Knowledge in Barcaldine in central Queensland, under which the Labor Party was famously formed, has in fact died. It died a long time ago, along with many of the principles that Labor once had. And they say that we shouldn't label them as socialist and communist, and heaven knows Bronwyn Bishop does every week on this program. And she's right, because they say, though, that this is not how Australians talk. You don't call people socialists, you don't call them communists. They claim to be progressive. But you see, understand their policies actually have a regressive impact on our economy, on our society, on families, on traditions, on our values. These Labor people who are going to be marching on Monday say the workers united will never be defeated, yet they create division. They create victimhood with their very negative narrative about, well, frankly, everything. But why in 2021 do they here in Queensland want to borrow a holiday from failed and failing regimes around the world where human rights violations are an everyday occurrence? That's right, they're signing up to regimes that hurt people who they perceive to be different to them. And so Labor, by the way they want to carry on, shows that they actually stand for the woke. They don't stand for work, they stand for the non-productive, they don't stand for the worker. So on one day they'll march for the struggle of workers' rights, but for the other 364 days, they'll stand for policies which actually destroy jobs. Now, party membership of the Labor Party is actually the key to advancement in state public services all around the country, in Queensland, Victoria, Western Australia, Northern Territory and the ACT. It's just like in North Korea and China. You get a party ticket, you go forward. And Labor's federal leadership, well, it comes from two of the smallest yet most woke inner city electorates in just one city, the great city of Sydney. How can they represent the whole of Australia when they can actually call out literally from the balconies of each of their two houses, these two leaders? Both leaders are from the left faction. It's a faction which subscribes to the international socialist doctrine, which of course is the worst of the woke. So my big question is, how can we trust them? How can we trust them on national sovereignty, on economic management, on delivering a strong Australia when there are so many of them that are actually affiliated with forces around the world and indeed also here in this country that are tearing us down? Now, Prime Minister Scott Morrison has made a great speech. He did it last night. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. He cops critique from me and others every time he gets distracted and responds to the bleating from, down in that weak and woke pathway. But he's made this speech outlining values, which is great. But the trouble is his government still seems unguided by their own Prime Minister's own words. Ministers, bureaucrats, institutions of government all going off on this weak and woke, lefty, internationalist claptrap. They're guided by these weak and woke elites in the public sector, the weak and the woke in the business leaders, big companies who say, oh, we've got to be this, we've got to be that. Well, Labor, they're worse, of course. They're all over the place. The inner city lefty lovies are now dominating over the blue-collar workers, the people that made the party what it was back in the 1890s. Australia needs to chart a strong values-based course, not fall into line with this long, slow con of climate change, of international control. So the Prime Minister is actually right. Our traditions and our values do count. Keen to know what you think, you can put it on Twitter, #Hardgrave. We'll look for your tweets. You can also write to me directly, gary.hardgrave@skynews.com.au.